How's this grab you, gang? All right, how's this grab you for a second? The city of Yonkers, New York, has just spent over $10 million in legal fees, pitted neighbor against neighbor, raised the ugly prospect of racial conflict, all because the government decided it wanted 800 units of low-income housing deposited in a middle-class neighborhood. And here we go again, some bubble-hat bureaucrat is in Washington telling people where they should live and with whom. It didn't work with busing. It won't work with housing. Yonkers next on the Morton Downey Show. Let me tell you, there weren't a lot of brave liberals out there, but some of them showed up here, and I'm glad they did tonight, because typically you invite the pablum pukers on a show like this. You know, they'll go to the New York Times, but when it comes to speaking to the people, they don't want to do it. But we've got a gentleman here today who I think is going to give us a little background on this. Joining me at home base is Michael Sussman, who is an attorney for the NAACP in Yonkers. And, let's get a little background on this from Michael's perspective, all right? Let's get a little background on this from Michael's perspective. Mike, you've been the attorney in this case since its inception,
That's
am I correct?
Right, Mort.
All right. Can you give us a brief history of the case?
Sure. In 1978, the Yonkers branch of the NAACP filed a complaint with the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, alleging that the Yonkers public schools were segregated in violation of the 14th Amendment and federal statutes. After 2 years of investigation, in December 1980, the Department of Justice sued the city of Yonkers, alleging both that the public schools were segregated in violation of the Constitution and that the city had intentionally confined 6,600 units of low-income housing to a 1 square mile quadrant in southwest Yonkers, purposely eliminating all other sites for consideration for that housing over a 40-year period because of the racial bias so typified by your audience. Now,
you'll have an opportunity. Cool it. You'll have an opportunity to make your editorial comments in a little while. NAACP, National Association Advancement of Colored People,
That's
right?
correct.
You
That's
don't look colored to me.
That's right. In 1983, the trial started. It consumed 90 days of court time, lasting about a year and a month. After a year and another month, Judge Sand rendered a 600-page decision in federal district court in the Southern District of New York, in which he found all of the allegations of the Justice Department, which had by that time been joined in the suit by the NAACP, to have been well-founded. The judge then ordered the city and the school board to come up with plans, both to desegregate the school system and to integrate housing in the city. In May of 1986, the judge entered orders to that effect after hearing from all parties. In September, the school district successfully began a school desegregation plan, which has now desegregated 29 of the 30 schools. The city has resisted the housing desegregation orders of the court. In late 1987, December 28th, the Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, in a unanimous decision with 2 white male Reagan appointees in the majority, affirmed all of Judge Sand's findings and found entirely frivolous the arguments of the city of Yonkers that they had not systematically engaged in racial discrimination. Last week, by a 5-2 vote, at the wall of contempt, the City Council of Yonkers agreed to a plan to integrate the city with respect to housing. That's a short summary of the case, Morton.
All right, then let me go to a gentleman who is at the loudmouth with us tonight, the Vice Mayor of Yonkers, Henry Spallone. Mr. Vice Mayor, does that jibe with your recollection?
I think they straightened out the case to do exactly what they wanted to do in his case. Let me remind Mr. Sussman, in 1968, between 1968 and 1972.
Make sure you have your facts straight.
Excuse me, I didn't interrupt you. Don't interrupt me. You're not playing.
Make sure you have your facts straight.
You're not playing with Judge Sand. Get this straight. You're not playing with the kids you mugged in the council last week.
Make sure you have your
Let me
facts
tell you
straight.
something else. You deliberately left me out, and I think you violated the Constitution.
I'm not your lawyer.
Let me tell
Your
you
lawyer
something.
left you out, Mr.
Baloney.
Stallone.
Now, you've interrupted. You're interrupting.
Mike, let
You
him
don't
finish.
want to listen. You called everybody names. You talk about white and black.
All right,
Let's
let me
get
hear
down
how
to
this
the
thing
issue.
jibes with you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Between 1968 and 1972, the state, New York State Urban Development Corporation, and the Housing Corp, HUD, okay, the federal government, built 2,700 units of housing. Correct or incorrect?
Incorrect, sir.
Come on, you're lying.
Incorrect, sir.
You're lying.
How many did they build?
You're lying.
Well, let's find out from
Now.
Mike. How many did they build?
Now they have...
1,520 units.
Well,
That's
I
correct.
have it as 2,700 with 200 of senior citizen, okay? And we can go over the records.
All right, well, let's not get bogged down
Let's
in
not
those.
get bogged down with that. Now you know that the percentages were 70 and 30, okay? And in some cases, the 70 was white, 20% minority, and 10% senior citizen. And wasn't it Winston Ross in 1974 that demanded that the changes in the numbers be created in those housing projects? Or wasn't it? It's in your own file. It's in your own record. So did the government contribute or didn't it contribute, Mr.
Did the government
Sussman?
contribute? Yes, that's why we brought HUD into the lawsuit.
Okay.
I sued HUD and claimed that HUD had violated the rights of people in my class by going along with the city of Yonkers, which made available...
Well, let's hear. Wait a second. What is your class?
The class I represent is the class of all blacks and Hispanics, all blacks and Hispanics in the city.
Let's hear.
I can take this all day.
Let Michael answer it. All right.
All right.
Your
The class, excuse me.
Your
I
class
work-
is the human race, I
No,
assume.
that's not the human race, sir.
not
I'm a
the-
lawyer. I'm a lawyer. I'm not a rhetorician, sir. You had me on the show to represent the point of view, and I'm going to represent that point of view on
are
your
welcome-
show. Now,
you are welcome
now,
to make a complete ass of
Fine.
yourself.
Under the federal rules of civil procedure, a lawyer goes into court and can have certified a class of individuals who are similarly situated and have the same grievance. In this case, in 1982, a class was certified by Judge Leonard Sand of all blacks and Hispanics in the city who are eligible to live in subsidized housing and who are in the Yonkers public schools.
What about the poor
From
whites?
the beginning,
What about
from
the
the
poor
beginning,
whites?
the
They're
poor
not-
whites were not discriminated on the basis of race. That's the simple answer. Okay? And they have no constitutional right not to be discriminated on the basis of race. Blacks have that under the 14th Amendment.
Toss me a match.
Now, just to finish...
Go ahead. Mr. Spallone.
It comes to my attention with the blacks and some of the Hispanics in this community that you don't represent them. There's one gentleman here that says you don't represent them. And let me say this to you. I still haven't identified the Hispanics that are involved in this case. The only thing you got in 1986 was a paper submitted by someone in, I believe, in New York
You know,
City.
wait a second. I'm confused here. I thought this was low-income housing we were talking about.
Well, this case had to do with education and housing. It's the first case in the country that combined the two legally and held the city responsible for the segregation of both at the same time. That issue has been somewhat obscured because we're focusing the controversy on housing. But I think Mr. Spallone is now going back to some of the education issues.
But aren't we indeed talking, Mr. Vice Mayor, about low-income housing here? And why do we always have to bring it in that it's only black who need low-income housing?
Correct, it's not.
Well, let's look at
And
the-
we have not asserted any desire for quotas in the housing we're constructing. I've never said that. The housing...
Let's hear it. Let's hear it. Let's hear it. Let's hear
You
it.
want the facts, or you want to scream? You can scream all you want. The facts are very simple.
Wait a second. Let's get as many facts out for the people of America so that they don't get caught in this kind of all right? Go ahead.
Facts are very simple. There's a waiting list of 3,300 families for low-income housing currently in Yonkers. There are about 12,000 families who are eligible. The majority of families eligible are white. They don't put their names on the waiting list because all the housing is located in minority neighborhoods where they don't want to live. The reality is that once the housing gets put up in predominantly white neighborhoods, many whites, most likely, if other communities' experiences hold true in Yonkers, will join the waiting list because they are more receptive to living among their own, if you'll put it that way.
Okay, and that's black, white, Hispanic. Same all over. Well, wait a second. I'm not going to the next segment. I'm not going to the next segment yet. Wait a second. Cool it a second. Where do you live, Mr. Sussman?
In Orange County.
In Orange County?
That's correct.
80 acres worth more.
That's correct.
That's all right.
I have a farm in Orange County. It's 77 acres. Never made any bones about it. I've lived there for 2.5 years.
No problem with that. How much money have you made on this case?
To date,
wait a second. I want to get some answers up here. Zip it. I want some answers. How much money have you made on this case so
far? I have not made much money. You want me to explain? I'll be happy to explain entirely to you. Under the 1976 Attorney Fee Act, a lawyer who wins a civil rights case is entitled, with the judge's order, to get his fees paid by the party that loses. I submitted an application last June to Judge Leonard Sand for $980,000. $800,000 in fees, 75% of which goes to the NAACP, which funded the case at the national office level, $180,000 in costs. When that money is all in, which is now ordered to be by February 13th, I will probably get about $225,000 for the 7 years I spent on the case.
All right, tell you what. Next we're going to try and find out why the government always thinks that they have the answer. They've screwed it up every time. Let's see if they've got the answer this time. I don't know. Hey, if you like me at 9, you're going to love me at 11. Don't miss the special late-night edition of the Morton Downey Jr. Show, all next week at 11. I thought we'd invite our two antagonists up on stage with each other. So who brought along all those papers with them? Did you?
Yes, I did.
Cripers, you're not going to have time to go through those.
That's all right.
Let me, two gentlemen at our loudmouths, all right? Let me introduce to these gentlemen Bert Wallace, president of the Yonkers NAACP. Mr. Wallace, how are you, sir? And Stonewall Odom, president of the Tower Society. How you doing? Let me go first. Let me go first to Mr. Wallace. Why is it the NAAC's position all the time on issues like this, that the government, that they join the government as the determining body in who lives where and who goes to school where, Mr. Wallace?
If you don't mind, Mr. Downey, I would like to answer the question by first saying that it isn't a matter of the NAACP joining the government. It's a matter of human rights and human dignity. Back in 1905, when there was a movement up in Niagara, which was in New York, started by Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois and a group of caring black people who had escaped from slavery, wanting to do something about all of the brutality that was happening throughout this country. I was not born at that time. In 1910, there was a group of caring white people who, 1909, who had been reading about what had been happening throughout this country. And what brought them together was that there was a great deal of brutality and killing and raping and murdering going on.
I know. Wait a second. And Mr. Wallace, believe me, I am familiar with the roots of the NAACP, all right? But why, in the name of God, is it always the NAACP jumping in with the government on these issues? Do you still think those situations exist today?
I don't think it's jumping in with the government. It is turning to the law of the land in order to give those rights that are due people who have been denied based upon the Constitution.
Well, I'm not sure that I understand what rights a person has all right, other than what the Constitution gives you. The Constitution does not give you the right, because you can't afford to move into a middle-class neighborhood, the right to move into that middle-class neighborhood. The people who are in the middle-class neighborhood have had to work their way out of low-class neighborhoods. They are there because they have seized the American dream. I believe everyone should have the opportunity to seize the American dream and not steal it. Now, in your opinion, does it make any difference where low-income housing is put? Really? Is it important to put low-income housing into an area where there might not be public transportation, and you end up with people in that area not being able to get to a job, so they never work the job, so that they remain forever in low-income housing and are denied the real opportunity to pick themselves up by their bootstraps?
I still must answer the question by saying to you and to the audience here that when an individual is denied the right to having freedom to move, to live, and to be properly educated because of whatever the situation is, then if low housing is to be built and constructed to give people the right and the to select where they can live without being placed someplace, then yes, if we have to go to the government, we will do just that.
Then I have a suggestion. Why don't you do this? Why don't you take this low-income housing and go to the real pablum-puking limousine liberals and build it in Scarsdale? There is none. All right? Build it in Larchmont. There is none. Build it where all the rich live. Let the rich do it, all right? Put it with them. Start on his farm.
I'm having a very difficult time in...
No. The man is a gentleman. Let's treat him like one.
I have a difficult time, and my difficulty is based upon one factor. I am an American who is called a black American. I have fought in 2 wars for democracy in this country. And because of that, and because people, due to their colors, have been denied and been placed in areas because of their color, only because of their
nationality, and because of their religion,
racial, ethnicity, and religion.
And because they're homeless, Koch puts them in the
homeless,
hospital.
yes. All of the people who are, I call, the class of people that are just forgotten about, should have the right to live where they want to live.
If they can't afford it. Why should the taxpayers, why in the name of God should the taxpayers go out and acquire expensive property, all right, to build low-income housing, to generally, and I'm not going to generalize, generally take the neighborhood in the first few years, panic it, and send it running, all right? I say move them into the rich neighborhoods.
One last response, if I may. When you talk about where people can afford, and you're talking about economics, and you're talking about the country in its entirety, the controlling factor in this country are people who look like you. And because of that,
me?
I'm talking about my blue-eyed brother. I'm referring to you as my blue-eyed brother.
You got it, pal.
And because of that, and the controlling factor in this country, I did not ask to be Bert Wallace, the black person that I'm called. I am Bert Wallace, a person.
Damn right.
But if You deny me. And it has happened in Yonkers. When my wife and I were looking for a home, I could not live in certain sections of Yonkers.
How long ago, Bert?
I could not live.
How long ago, Bert? How long ago?
About 10 or 15 years ago.
Well, let me go first to Michael, all right? What's wrong with the upward mobility being a function of hard work, educational, and cultural assimilation?
Because that's not the history. The history is very simply this. In Yonkers, the neighborhoods that you consider middle class, upper middle class neighborhoods, in the 1950s, 1940s, when the housing was originally being placed, were largely undeveloped neighborhoods. They didn't have a particular character. At that time, the Municipal Housing Authority and other municipal agencies sought to place the housing all over the city, low-income housing all over the city. There weren't defined ghetto neighborhoods in Yonkers then. 2-3% of the people were minorities. Even as early as then, white people who were originating those neighborhoods said, no, we don't want blacks there. That was their rhetoric. That rhetoric under
They didn't use the word blacks.
They used colored. They used colored. They used Negro. But we're talking in current parlance. I say blacks. That was their intention. That's what they were referring to. They said people from Harlem. They said people from Puerto Rico. How do I know? Because I researched and have minutes of every single meeting of the Municipal Housing Authority going back to when it started in 1937. Excuse me. Excuse me. You're the ones who are ignorant. Just shut up and listen. You know something? Mort Downey asked a question. Mort Downey asked a question to Bert Wallace. When did the last time it happen? When did he look for a house? Well, you know what happened in 1982 in December in Yonkers? Yonkers had represented to HUD that it would make a list, which it did in November 1980, of sites in East Yonkers which were suitable for assisted housing. It put on that list School 4, among other sites. HUD reviewed the sites and said, School 4 is a suitable site for assisted housing. Yonkers had made a pledge to HUD as a condition of receiving $20 million in federal money that we will build 200 units of assisted housing in East Yonkers. They voluntarily made that pledge. I wasn't in Yonkers. I didn't force them to do it. They made the pledge because they wanted the federal money and they knew the law required that.
Okay.
What did they do? They took School 4, hold on, they took School 4 and they then tried to sell it for luxury condominium, throwing out the only site they had for low-income housing in East Yonkers. Now, that was directly done to block racial groups from moving into the city. It was said on December 21st at the city council meeting in 1982. I was at the meeting. No bones were made. We don't want blacks in East Yonkers. That's what the folks here said, period. So let's not fool anyone about motive.
Let me hear. Go ahead. Let me introduce this one, Stonewall Odom, all right? He's president of Salvage Society. This gentleman.
Michael, I'd like to see you, Michael, I said, I'd like to see you pick out the white person that said that in council meeting. Well, you condemned all these people for what one or two people said.
I'm not condemning them for that reason, sir. If you want my response.
Mr. Wallace said that the NAACP was started with a group of whites back in 1910, and we want our listening public to know that it's still being led by whites today. Perfect example. If this is such a black issue here, where's Hazel Dukes? Where's Benjamin Hooks? Why are you the messenger to bring this?
May I respond, Mr. Downey?
Do you realize, you know, Mr. Sussman, white liberals like you turn my stomach. You know.
You're Uncle Tom and you turn my stomach. You're an Uncle Tom. You're a tool of the white.
He's an Uncle Tom because he agrees with whites. He's an Uncle Tom.
He's an Uncle Tom.
In other words, anytime anyone agrees with a white idea, you're an Uncle Tom.
He has acted.
If he's an Uncle Tom, you're a hypocrite.
Fine. Let me explain. Stonewall Odom has acted in concert with the white community for the last 2 years. He has no program and no base.
Let me explain something to you, Master Sussman.
No base.
It is Please, let me explain something to Master Sussman.
Go ahead,
White
sir.
liberals like you are the reason the black community is bogged down in social programs. You spend more money running social programs and maintaining poverty than you do eradicating it. We would like...
Why don't you tell us your program for eradicating poverty in
Mr.
Yonkers?
Sussman...
I'll tell you mine when we get off the show, all
Mr.
right?
Sussman...
I'm very interested in yours.
Huh?
Mr. Sussman... Mr.
You
Sussman,
should be, because you guys haven't done squats.
we would like...
Really?
Why?
You haven't done...
Why then is the black middle class today, as a result of the affirmative action programs and the investment in education, daycare, child care, making the
The
moves that
black
it's
community
made?
would be far ahead of what it's accomplished without people like you and the pablum pukers out there by giving them the dignity to do it on their own.
With the racism,
You have economically captured and enslaved the blacks,
Explain
the
that to you, Mr. Sussman,
Hispanics.
from a black point of view.
tell us.
Downey.
Low-income housing in America was built in our neighborhoods because that's where we lived, and it was built purposely for the poor and the underclass of society. It was an effort to allow us to get out of the rat and roach-infested housing that we once lived in, and the rents were adjusted accordingly. So the next move was up to us. We were supposed to work hard, save our pennies, and then move into better housing. Now the federal government has come into the city of Yonkers and said, okay, black people, you don't have to do that. We will take the housing up and move you into the better neighborhoods. So all I have to say to my son is, son, stay black and stupid, and the federal government will continue to move you through the system.
Tell you what, next we'll ask the citizens of Yonkers if they're racist or outraged. You're gonna love me at 11. Don't miss the special late-night edition of the Morton Downey Jr. Show, all next week at 11. Welcome back, everybody. And I'd like to get on with this issue. I'd like to return to Mr. Spallone. Henry, the ugly publicity generated by this issue has led a lot of people to think of Yonkers as racist. Is Yonkers a racist community?
Let me explain something. I think we've got to get the record straight. I think what's happening in America, especially with HUD, has to be addressed because the black people, the Hispanics, the whites, everyone in this country is really paying a big debt to housing. One of the great tragedies is this. When we start to talk about housing, let's look at Newark, only recently destroying 4,000 units of housing, public housing, and replacing it with only 900 units of public housing. What have we really created here? We spent millions and millions and millions of dollars for a program to give housing to the poor. What has happened? We've taken those poor people, those poor families, and we've thrown them out into the street. We've taken perfectly good buildings, and we're dynamiting them. It is not only in Newark. It is happening in Boston.
It's happening in New York City.
Baltimore, New York. We're destroying thousands and thousands of units of housing. Now, there comes a time when we have to be realistic. You know, when they were destroying everything up in White Plains, what Mr. Sussman doesn't tell you, the exodus was to Mount Vernon, Tuckahoe, and Yonkers. The people that were building that housing was the UDC, which is the state, and the federal government. The people that got blamed for it was the city of Yonkers. Now, let me say this to you. How can you imagine being guilty of something for 50 years? The laws weren't even on the books.
Now, let me ask Mr. Sussman.
Yes, sir.
Do you think Yonkers is a racist community? Do you think Mr. Spallone is a racist?
I think that the community itself probably, if you looked at the majority of the community, took a head count, is not. I think, though, as the courts have found about Yonkers, the political process has been paralyzed and dominated by certain persons who could be named.
They'll name them.
Well, certain persons, one, for example, Nicholas Benyo, who is a person in Yonkers who, in the 1960s and early 1970s, played a terribly regressive role. Whenever proposals were made in his ward,
Another one.
He characteristically stopped them.
Name
I think Mr. Longo's advertisements of the last campaign, Mr. Cipriani's statement in 1982 that he would abide, quote, by the will of the community when he knew the will of the community, as he stated in his depositions, was a racist will. I think that's a racist kind of statement.
Racist?
I think Mr. Spallone has played to a racist element in Yonkers. Yes.
Does that make him a racist, yes or no?
Let me say
Does that
this
make him
to
a
you.
racist?
It makes him a politician who's not following the 14th Amendment, which is his duty.
Does it make him a politician who may be following the dictates of the people who put him in office?
Yes, and there are limits to majoritarianism.
You see, wait a minute. Mr. Sussman,
Is that why? Is that why the judge? It may be important, but
This
it's
is very important.
It
Wait
may
a
be
minute.
important, but is that why the judge, in my opinion, blackmailed the city council members
They
by
didn't
telling them?
blackmail.
He
No, he
blackmailed them
didn't.
by
He did
saying
not
he was going to have them
blackmail. Wait a
remove
minute.
them
Let me
off.
say this
No,
to you.
no,
Why
no,
didn't
no, we're
Mr.
getting
Sussman invite me
confused.
to the consent decree meetings if he's so concerned about the 14th Amendment?
Why don't you
know,
invite him?
in the Fifth Amendment,
Mr. Spallone, you had a
prisoner-
lawyer.
Please, don't tell me about
you
my
had-
lawyer. You conferred with him. You were well aware of
Yes.
it. It was in the newspapers.
Yes.
Your judge was aware of it. You denied my people the rights, their civil rights. You are a participant.
All right.
You are, as far as I'm concerned, a participant
Fine.
in a possible conspiracy.
All right.
Let me say this to you. Secret meetings had no place
All right.
in this kind of a situation.
First
and
of all,
let me
I
address
agree.
one other
I
thing.
agree. Let
Wait,
me
wait,
respond to
let
that
me
and then
finish.
go on to your next
Let
point.
me finish.
Let me respond to that
Let
and
me
then go on.
finish. One other thing.
Go ahead.
This constant idea that this is a civil rights case. Let me remind you and the judge, everyone here has civil rights, and we're all to be protected by the Constitution.
Right, now let
and this idea,
Mr. Sussman.
civil rights, and I'm going to punish you
Henry,
for the birds.
Well, let me hear what he has to say.
All right. Mr. Spallone is referring to a series of negotiations that took place between the lawyer for the NAACP, the lawyer for the Justice Department, and the lawyer who was duly representing the city of Yonkers. There were also meetings of the city council, which I was not at, in which Mr. McAmis, the lawyer for the city of Yonkers, was conferring with 5 city councilmen and not all 7. That was a decision of the mayor, apparently, Mr. Longo, and some other city council members to exclude Mr. Spallone because they felt that he was obstreperous. Now, that wasn't my decision. I don't tell the city lawyer who to speak with among his clients. That's not my reason. I have no basis to do that. I can't interfere.
But
That's
the
why I can't.
conspiracy is that you put the
There's no
housing
conspiracy.
in my area without my knowledge, and you play the game.
Is that where the bulk of the housing goes?
You put it in my area.
Is that where the bulk of the housing goes?
You like to play
Have
this
108 of the
Yes.
200 initial units
Yes.
gone into his
Yes.
area?
There are 3.
Why, magically, was the majority of it selected for his area when he was held out of these meetings?
All right, let me explain that very simply. A number of sites that were approvable sites had been developed by the housing advisor, Mr. Newman. Those sites were spread throughout East Yonkers, and a couple were in Northwest Yonkers. During the course of the negotiations, the city of Yonkers was given by us discretion to indicate to us which sites it wanted to support. That was part of the negotiation.
And they wanted his.
Its lawyers came back to me with a list of sites. These are the 7 sites, which Mr. Spallone knows
Because
about.
they had made him the scapegoat.
Because
all right?
they felt... I
Because they had
don't...
made...
I do
We're
not
going to talk
disagree.
to the people, all right? We're going to come back to you, Stonewall. We're going to talk to the people who have to live with this settlement. The citizens of Yonkers next. Hey, if you like me at 9, you're going to love me at 11. Don't miss the special late-night edition of the Morton Downey Jr. Show, all next week at 11. All right. I want to go back. Stonewall, I want to come back to you for just a second. I mean, is this for helping the disadvantaged in this country, or is this to maybe clear out an area and develop something and make some money for the big cats again?
That's what this is all about. There should be a congressional investigation as to what is happening in the city of Yonkers. This is one of the biggest land rip-offs that I've ever seen in my life. The black community in the area they're talking about here, the most developable property here is located in the black community. They want to build luxury condos and co-ops here. Now, in order for them to do this, they must afford
down
these
by the
people-
waterfront?
Down by the waterfront,
Yeah.
where the black community is located.
Uh-huh.
And remind you, this is an integrated area, so we're not sick of only black over here. So now, in order to afford these people some sense of security, you must not have ghettos and low-income housing surrounding this area. So when they discovered oil on the Indians' land, the cavalry removed them. Now Judge Sand and Mr. Sussman is removing the black community here for the yuppie community. I would like to say...
Let me go. Bernadette, let me go to Bernadette first. Bernadette, you've been very involved in what's going on, and you haven't been silent about it either. Don't be silent tonight. What's going on up there?
What's going on?
Yeah, you bet. I mean, we saw busing fall flat on its butt, all right? And now they're doing this. It's more social engineering by the government. I mean, they took all the schools, bust them all, so instead of having just a few bad schools in the country, now they all stink, all right? And education's gone down the tube. The black community didn't want the busing,
no,
all right?
They didn't.
87% of them didn't want the busing. And now, I'll bet you 87% of them don't want to be forced into low-income housing in an area they don't want to go to.
That's right. This is typical. This is typical, Mort. Exactly what's going on across the country is being very dramatically presented here in Yonkers, because you have a community that has, as Stonewall said, not been asked. They are not represented by this man, whose remark to Stonewall about being an Uncle Tom I find extremely in bad taste.
What do you expect?
Rather indicative.
What do you
rather
expect?
indicative.
What do you expect from a Harvard graduate? You only have to have a 14 IQ to get into that dump now.
All the buttons, all the buttons. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Mr. Chima, go ahead. Mr. Chima. Well, Mr. Chima, of course, is...
Chima's the man who said he was going to vote for the settlement, and then at the last minute he decided he couldn't. That's an appropriate introduction to him.
You mean there was one guy with a conscience?
One guy, right.
Let me hear from Mr. Chima.
Mort, you're absolutely right. There's no justice at all to this settlement. What they did to the city council members in federal court was an atrocity of justice. Not only did the judge freeze all major economic development projects in the city of Yonkers, but...
Sounds like blackmail to me.
That's just a start. The judge threatened fines of $100 a day, which would double for 30 days and would be billions of dollars by 30 days to bankrupt the city. The judge threatened to take the elected officials out of office.
Mr. Sussman denies that.
No, he doesn't.
You didn't deny
Mr.
that the judge...
Sussman said that blackmail is a totally inappropriate term for that. The judge was exercising...
blackmail.
It is not
in my opinion.
In your opinion,
In my
it may be
opinion.
blackmail. It's
And
not
I'm an
blackmail.
American!
And I'm an
And
American,
that judge is there because we put him in there. Not because of family and flippers like you.
And you knew. Now let me say this to you.
Go ahead, Mr. Chima.
This judge knew that the council was threatened, and they were threatened to such a degree. In fact, they got mugged. They were threatened to such a degree. You know, we have a writ of certiorari to go to Supreme Court, and I believe that
You don't know all those fancy words, Henry. Let's get back to the people from Yonkers, all right? We're going to see if there's any way to prevent this from happening in your community, and we're going to hear from the rest of the studio audience. Stand by. Hey, if you like me at 9, you're going to love me at 11. Don't miss the special late-night edition of the Morton Downey Jr. Show, all next week at 11. This gentleman was with us in the first segment, never got an opportunity to say something. Introduce yourself,
Yes,
sir.
I'm Harry Oxman, the City Council of Yonkers.
Wait a second, let him say it.
I am the one, and I'd say the only one, who has stood in his position, I think, except for Mr. Spallone. My position has always been that with all the monies that we've spent so far on this particular court case, that it's time, and it's been time a long while, that we set things back and let's start running the city of Yonkers. I was born and raised in the city of Yonkers. I know what Yonkers is all about. I can't say that for everyone that is here sitting here this evening.
Well, I'll tell you something.
I'm interested in the city not going bankrupt. I'm 68 years old, and I feel that my kids and my relatives and my friends who have lived in Yonkers, whose kids have been in Yonkers all their life.
My family comes from Yonkers.
Right, so I'm glad that you understand. So what I'm saying to you, in essence, I wasn't in on the negotiations either, just as Hank wasn't.
All right.
But we did have a Yonkers plan which was a while back.
You know, we could make everyone happy here tonight.
Okay.
We could start off and everyone would be on an equal foot. We'd say, hey, yay for the low-income housing. All we need to do is to get Mr. Sussman to donate his $800,000 fee.
It's not in Yonkers. It's not in Yonkers. It's going to cost us $250 million.
Let me hear from this gentleman.
Yes, Mike.
Yes, Mr. O'Toole.
There's
How are
some
you?
joy in Yonkers tonight, a small bit after what you did to it, because we know that you're a liar, and we know that you're a divisive person, but now, hopefully, the rest of this country is going to know that. Yonkers has 25% of the population of Westchester County, 44% of the low-income housing.
Correct.
You know what our crime was, Mike? We tried to help people. That's why you came after us, because we tried to help people. And you're going to become a very rich person, aren't you? Yeah. On our backs.
Good evening, Mort. I'd like to thank you for presenting this argument with Yonkers. I just want to tell you this is not a racial issue whatsoever at all. The problem in Yonkers is green discrimination. $2 billion of development money on the waterfront. And if you want to look at the federal government in action, just look what the federal government has done to the American Indian. If they haven't raped them the same as what they're going to do to Yonkers, I'll sell you the Brooklyn Bridge.
Let me tell you about my friends in Baltimore, all right? Look at the beautiful harbor they have down there now. It's because they moved the low-income people out.
Exactly.
Built that up, all right? Governor Schaefer, you're watching us tonight. You know you did it, pal, all right? That's what happened. You say.
Just like to ask Mr. Sussman a couple of questions.
Sure.
One is, yes or no, did you ever work or be involved with Judge Sands as a law clerk in any way?
No.
Okay. Did Judge Sands attend your wedding?
No.
Okay. One fact you did not bring out about the low-income housing. When it was built, predominantly, most of it was the white community that lived in those low-income housing projects. And most of the whites that moved in there stayed there until the Bronx started burning, White Plains was cleaned out, and Mount Vernon started to do their renewal programs. And that's when the minority started moving in. And it was the constitutional rights of those whites that lived there. They wanted to leave for whatever reason. And they left, and they chose to move to another area. So gradually, what happened, it became predominantly a minority area. That's not the crime of the people in this city. And I just want to touch on one other thing.
Okay,
you mentioned real estate.
I got some other gentlemen.
Judge Sand is involved in 12 real estate partnerships in New York City. Here's a copy of his financial disclosure. Okay? I would like to know if any of those real estate partnerships are involved in any investments in the city of Yonkers, or how many
Judge
other people
Sands,
might
when
be
you
involved.
get a chance, answer that question for this gentleman, would you? Answer it for the record for them. The gentleman behind you, sir.
I'd like to say that the city of Yonkers is getting the shaft in this deal because this is a total miscarriage of justice. The people here who live in Yonkers, they're getting people who do not belong here because...
Well, people belong any place, all right? People belong any place
not when you
that
ship
they
them there,
can
though.
move to. Any place they can move to. I have to agree
That's
with
true.
that, and you have to agree with that, all
That's
right?
true.
But they
now
don't...
when you're shipping them there and giving them their own houses when they haven't done a thing for that.
Okay, we're going to take a break for a minute. We'll be right back. Hey, if you like me at 9, you're going to love me at 11. Don't miss the special late-night edition of the Morton Downey Jr. Show, all next week at 11. Couple of quick seconds that we have left. I'd like to go to this young lady.
Mr. Sussman, I ask that you not interrupt me because I am also a minority. I'm a woman, and I'm of Italian descent. Judge Sand has attacked the Roman Catholic Church and the synagogue. They're taking away the New York Archdiocese property. Since when does the state and federal government get involved with the church? If you're going to start to take away our church in Yonkers, you're going to take away everybody's church. And I'm a devout Catholic, and I have a right to go there, and my ancestors have a right to become priests and to learn at the seminary. The seminary is to be used for priests to learn about becoming one.
All right, let me hear from the young man behind you. Quickly now. Quickly.
Mort, my name is Steve Kubashek. I was a councilman in Yonkers
Got 30
for 12
seconds,
years.
Steve.
My only claim to fame or claim to shame is that I let the present mayor beat me as councilman, and now he's mayor. But the Vulcan suit in 1980 was going to take away the high school diploma from the firefighters. I fought, and the council fought, and we kept that. The consent decree in 1984 that I happened to vote for put 2 low-income sites on, Dunwoody site and the skating rink site, and you know what? The blacks turned it down in Runyon Heights, and Mr. Sussman didn't say a word.
The issue isn't over, my friends, because once again you've heard what happens when you allow the government to dictate social policy. The lawyers get rich, the people get shafted, and it's going to continue to happen again unless we tell the government to keep their nose out of our business. Vote them out of office!